Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Alert Podcast, brought to you by Kabod Group. Here we share insights on African language technologies and tools. Stay tuned as we dive into today's discussion. I am your host, Rebecca Agre, the language officer for Kabod Language Services. So, Kabod is a leading consulting firm in localization and translation and interpretation. We offer any services that has to do with languages. Today, we have a very special guest joining us in the person of Mr. Onyekachi, who is a young Igbo language advocate. Mr. Onyekachi, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you with us. And as you know, our listeners are always eager to learn more about initiatives that are promoting African languages and cultures online. So let's dive right into the conversation. So, Mr. Onyekachi, what actually first sparked this passion you have for advocating for the Igbo language? And what made you want to start offering professional Igbo language services?
Okay. Interestingly, throughout my secondary school education, that's my high school education, I never knew that, there was some kind of like career attached to languages, But then I grew up in a home where my parents raised us speaking our language, Igbo language, and also their dialects, which is Nsukka in Enugu, Nigeria. So probably because they didn't get to like complete their own education, to be speaking English to us, like it's how it's popular now that most families, speak English instead of their indigenous languages. But we grew up speaking Igbo at home. And so it got to a point in secondary school where we were to choose a subject, we get to have like elective courses, but then I started to choose between computer and Igbo language. So you have to do one, you can't do both. So I thought, well, I can easily get, basic complex skills. Let me just go for Igbo language. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I opted for Igbo language, and due to the fact that we were just few of us in the class, so it was easier to, learn more about it, interact with the teacher, have fun reading Igbo books, Igbo novels, things like that. So I got to ace Igbo language in my West Africa examination exam. That's the WAEC exam, which is kind of
Oh,
popular in
wow,
West Africa.
that's nice.
Yeah. So yeah. So when I got to the university, it turns out that was when I found out that okay, people actually go to the university to study Igbo language. Like, and I'm like, what do they actually do with it's a degree in Igbo language? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then I didn't know. So at some point in my second year, one of my cousins posted a spreadsheet in our family group chat and was like, there's an Igbo translation thing coming up. So if you're interested and you are free, you can just sign up, just put in your name there. So then I didn't know, what Igbo translation was all about. I never knew that there was anything like translation as a career or even for fun or anything. So I decided
Mm-hmm.
to sign up alongside my sister and we're like, let's just do it since we are good in Igbo. Let's also see how good our Igbo is. So we didn't even know then that there was even a payment attached to it. Like it was actually a project. So my sister and I signed up. So after that, we're given a test to write. We um, did the test, we passed, and then we were added to the group, and we were in a group chat with the Hausa and Yoruba speakers, translators too. So that was my first ever experience with Igbo translation projects. So we did that, and surprisingly, we're very good at it. Translation is not just
Mm-hmm.
I got to, that was where I got to learn that translation is not even about you knowing your language well, and
Exactly.
it's also not about you studying the language in the university.
Mm-hmm.
Translation is, should I say, an art? It's more like an art. It takes careful thinking, it takes brain work, it takes, you translate by context, you do your research, because it's not word for word translation. So you have to like adapt it to your culture for it to make sense to the audience. So then we found out that okay, we can actually do this. And then we started learning about okay, translation services, language services, and we found out that oh, it's actually a large scope, like a huge scope of career in languages. So and I thought, okay, since I'm good at this, even though I was studying zoology at the time, because I
Mm-hmm.
studied zoology in the university, I thought, okay, since I'm good at this and I can do this, then I didn't have a laptop. I was just doing it with my phone, and I can do this with my phone at the comfort of my home. Then why don't I, do more research and then try, to venture into Igbo language services? That was where like the thoughts came in. So I decided like doing my research, signing up in different websites, trying to see if I could get a job as a translator and all of that. So that was how the inspiration came. And
Wow. That's so interesting. I'm glad you mentioned the fact that translation is an art, and it is. It needs all your senses to be alive, to be able
yeah,
to translate, consider that context and everything. So yeah, so now moving on from you now having started your professional Igbo language service. I know you have probably worked with some Nigerian and international clients over the years. What would you say is the biggest challenge in providing top-notch Igbo translation, whether it be transcription or even language learning in general?
okay, thank you. Yeah, I've worked with few Nigerian clients. In this line of work, most cases it's international clients because it's mostly those who run services abroad that want to get Igbo translations for their Igbo customers or Igbo users or things like that. So I've worked more with international clients, and I'm sorry to say, but I don't know, but it feels easier it feels easier working with international
Wow.
clients
Why
because
is that
they
the
have
case?
some level of, yeah, they have some level of sympathy. Okay, they're kind of like, I don't know, probably because they have some kind of notion about what Africa is like in general or what Nigeria is like in general. So they're always ready to sympathize with you. Maybe you can meet up with deadline. Maybe you're having light issues or data is too costly or fuel for your generator is too costly. When you explain to them, okay, I can't meet up with this deadline because of these things. They're like, okay, no problem. Let me extend the deadline for you. Things like that. But then when you're working with a Nigerian, even the tone of their text, even the tone of their text, you're like, oh God, let me not disappoint this person because they're already in Nigeria, so you can't start telling them you're having light issues. Things like they'll tell you you should have known this before you accepted the job, which is not entirely wrong of them to say. You know, but then the major challenges I've faced, number one is electricity. If you work online in Nigeria and you don't have stable electricity, backup electricity, things like that, um, it's definitely going to be very difficult for you because currently I'm not at home. I'm living on my own for now, and I can't afford to buy a generator now. I can't afford to install solar backup power. Okay, I have to depend on electricity, and that's to keep my laptop charged. And there's no power bank for laptop that I can use that I can afford to buy now. But for my phone, I do have a power bank, but that's also is not all that sustainable. So electricity is the major challenge. Secondly, the cost of data is like data keeps getting costlier. They keep adding more tax to data and everything. Then thirdly, we have to be deadline challenges of deadline because, like I mentioned, translation requires research. There's this limitation of vocabulary. Our indigenous languages don't have enough vocabulary to cover up all the modern words, like technical names,
Mhm,
environmental names, physics, chemistry, things like that. Most of them don't have it. You have to like either bring up new words in form of
mhm,
neologism or you spell it in your language. That's transliteration. But
mhm,
even doing that still needs careful application. So you don't just do it anyhow because
mhm.
someone else somewhere, another translator somewhere, is also trying to do the same thing. So at some point there might be some kind of conflict. So
Yes.
due to that, you need enough time to be able to do your research, get your vocabularies, and make sure you put out quality work. Then the last major challenge is payment. So
Mhm,
you have you
mhm,
have more international clients, okay? But
mhm,
then a good percentage of them are fake in the sense that you perform so much work for them and then they ghost you in the end when it comes to payments. Some of them they do pay, but then they pay so little, probably because of the amount of work they got, or because these agents, translators, language service providers are so desperate to get work, they've not cut so little to pay them. Then the other one is the issue of payment channels. Some will tell you, okay, they can only pay through PayPal. I know Nigeria doesn't support the
PayPal.
PayPal doesn't support, yeah, for Nigerian accounts. There's a limitation to Nigerian accounts. You can't withdraw, you might be able to receive payment, but you can't withdraw to your account, things like that. Some will tell you, okay, it's PayPal or Payoneer, but then the issue with Payoneer is that there's also a limitation. I think you must have an initial deposit, I think, of $1,000, which
Exactly.
of course a freelancer cannot afford to to get. You might even work a whole year, you've not gotten like that $1,000 of an initial deposit. So these are one of the major challenges, some of the major challenges I've faced working with Nigerian and international clients.
Okay. Wow. I'm glad you mentioned all these challenges. I mean, I'm sure you also equally come up with solutions to them. For instance, for the payment system where some of them will not pay at all. I'm sure you probably come up with the solution of making them make a deposit before you start the translation work. And when you were given some of your biggest challenges, I realized that you mentioned the fact that you didn't have a laptop and everything. So we know that technology has evolved so much in the last few years, and so how do you think that technology will help or maybe even hinder your efforts to preserve and promote the use of Igbo during the time that you have in this field?
Okay, thank you. I've been working as a translator since I think 2020. Yeah, so it's been 4 years working as in language services, translation, voiceover, transcription, curriculum development, all of that. And yes, technology is very, very important. You can't even do without it. I mean, you can't do your translation on paper. You have to do it with your devices. And at first, I didn't have a laptop, but I got to master, using my phone to work. But then there's also the limitation of, some CAT tools, that's computer assisted tools for translation. Um,
Exactly.
that you cannot use your phone like
Mm-hmm.
to perform all the work. For example,
Yeah.
the phrase app, which used to be MemSource, um, you can use it for your translations, but to the quality assessment, the quality assurance test, you can't use it to do that. That's a feature that points out corrections for you to correct. You can't do that with your phone. You have to log in with your laptop and then access it in the web to be able to do that. So you might do all the work, but you can't submit it. You can't bring out corrections. So that is where having a laptop becomes important. So, and that includes every other kind of work. You have so much to do, and it's not something that all of them you can do on the phone. So you must get a laptop at some point, especially when you start getting more jobs. Laptop helps you to multitask. It makes it easier to multitask because you can open a couple of windows at the same time. And then it's also important in the sense that when it comes to language preservation, because you can't always go to the museum to access, the things that our forefathers and our foremothers used in the past. Let's say what they were speaking, the kind of languages they had, their dialects. It's not something that can be preserved on paper. There's a need for digital archives. There's need for putting these things in animations, recording them as videos, uploading the music that we already have, the one that used to be on CDs, and uploading them online, last forever. So technology is very, very important to when it comes to preservation and promotion. I think the only limitation to this is that not everyone can afford, these technological devices, and
Yes.
not everyone knows how to use, to navigate their way through a technological device. You can buy a phone for your grandmother. She might be able to pick calls and make calls or read messages and send messages. But then asking her to, use it to access some files, to digitalize maybe how she speaks, things like that. She might not be able to do that. So that's also a limitation because not
Mhm.
everyone knows how to use technology, and technology is not available to everyone. So that's the limitation.
That's indeed a great limitation. So I'm sure you've seen this new wave of intelligence being equated to your ability to speak foreign languages, to be able to speak English, French, and other languages. So you realize that there are some parents who will even chastise their children for speaking their mother tongues at home. So, as someone who is deeply familiar with the Igbo language, how do you think incorporating language apps, voice assistants, and even other tech tools can help in engaging or getting the younger generation to be much more engaged with African languages?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, language learning apps and development technology is very much important because I find that one of the reasons why our languages keep fading is not that people are not really interested, but if my parents didn't train me up, in Igbo language, no matter how much I want my own children to speak the language, and not if I don't know how to properly speak them, I can't pass it on to my
Mm-hmm.
children.
Yes.
So, and you know that a lot of Africans migrate. We migrate a lot in search of, better lives, better opportunities.
Mhm.
So when we now travel to a whole new country where there's predominantly speak a particular language, we end up not speaking ours, and then we end up not speaking that to our children because we feel like, okay, it's probably not so important. Maybe they should focus on learning the language of this country that they're already in. So, and then when I'll now try to teach them my own language, it might be a little bit too late. So having all these language learning apps, having all these animations. Imagine if Cocomelon has an Igbo version, you know,
Exactly.
and
It will be so
yeah,
fun.
or something like Miss Rachel or Barney and
Mm-hmm.
Friends. They
Mm-hmm.
are in Igbo languages, and you just put it for your babies, and then they grow up watching this, learning it, speaking, singing in Igbo, and all those kind of things. Definitely more. We definitely have more Igbo speakers or more indigenous language speakers than we have
Mm-hmm.
today. But all these things are in English. Even here in Nigeria, our schools we only teach in English. So some schools will even tell you that they don't do Nigerian languages, that your parents should do that. So you find out that there's that gap that needs to be filled, and that is where all these technologies come in. So even if your parents don't have time to train you in English, you can even access it yourself, maybe as an adult. Maybe you grew up not learning your language. You can easily access these the apps, the voice assistants, all these things can easily help you. Imagine if let's say you came to the village and you need to like interact with your cousins but you don't know Igbo so much. Imagine if you have all these translators, all these voice translators that you speak your own language to it, and then it brings out the native language to the person you want to understand what you're saying. So that
Mm-hmm.
also bridges that gap of, instead of us not being able to communicate at all, you can have a machine in between that, that helps with, language exchange, help us to interact, automatically translate what I'm saying for you to understand. So that is why it's very important to have these technology tools.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So now moving from the tech aspect, I mean, moving from being able to help children to access all these platforms, now let's take a look at other innovative ways where we can envision using technology to actually document and then analyze some of our languages. Do you think there are other ways that can be explored?
Yes, we can look at. I feel like in Igbo we used to have what we call Onwu committee. We used to have what we call Onwu committee. So this committee are a committee of like elders. So they were the ones that came together and say, okay, this is um this is what we would have our standards. Since Igbo have so many dialects, this is what we have as standard. This is what will be our standard language when it comes to writing, teaching. This will be our universal Igbo language while we have our dialect. So today we don't have such thing that is universal, though we still have some committees, but it's no longer united as it used to be, such that because it's important we have like how I mentioned the limitation of having a glossary or a vocabulary of terms. So it's important to have like a committee that will come together and say, okay, new terms keep coming up every day. This association should be in charge of deriving new terms, new translation of all these terms consistently or constantly. As time goes, it should be like a consistent effort, like it's not something that they will come together and they'll end it. It has to go on, keep going on. A team of professionals, Igbo professionals, Igbo linguists, Igbo, archivers and all of that. Like, if they can do this, it will help a whole lot, you know. And they'll get to like bring these vocabularies that we're lacking because it will also help in our communication. Then also like the Nigerian client that I'm currently working with, when she reached out to me, she said that she feels bad that okay, she owns a company in Nigeria that produces things, but then the labelings, the title, names of the products are all in English. Why can't we have all these things written in Nigerian languages? Okay. So imagine if you go to the market, just like how they do in China. You hardly come to China and their products have English text on it.
Exactly.
Even their textbooks, everything is in their language. So imagine if we come to you go to the market and to the store, everything is in your language. Even if you don't know it, you can ask. And then when you ask and someone tells you, you know. That's how we learn. Don't just say because some people will protest against it and say that they might come to market and they won't know anything because they haven't been learning the language. But you learn from asking. So that way we'll get to like expand our languages, propagate it more. That also includes if we can even maybe in schools where that is predominantly a particular tribe in their school, using the native languages to teach, having textbooks in our native languages. These things are definitely going to go a long way to, help us, develop our language more. Yeah. Thank
Maybe
you.
will. So, as an advocate for the Igbo language, are there any goals that you have of continuing this your advocacy work or on a larger scale? Are there any plans?
Oh, yes. Okay. Apart from the fact that I'm currently working with a conference committee that is we're organizing a language conference which is focused on technology, data, and science. It's called the NLTSTC conference, Nigerian Languages, Data, and SciTech conference. So it said last year. This year we are going to have a second edition. So the major aim of this conference is to get people to see, okay, these are the people in our country or people from our countries that are developing innovative ways to propagate our languages, to develop our languages. You get to see them, get to meet them, hear from them, see their products, see what they are doing, and you get to use their products so that you get to help, develop languages. The conference is coming up this August. Then secondly, I'm thinking of kicking off a campaign, a language campaign. So I'm part
Mhm.
of an organization called Students for Liberty. So, and I've just been made a national coordinator. So I'm thinking of using that as a platform to kick off a language conference because in this Students for Liberty, we do have campaigns like Tech Liberty, where we get to advocate about right to technology and breaking the digital divide. We launch campaigns on different kind of philosophies, campaigns on against female genital mutilation, campaigns against oppressive laws. So I'm thinking of launching a campaign on languages, which would advocate for more use of our languages, especially in advertisements, things like that. We should have more of our language in the media, newspapers. Imagine having newspapers in our languages. Definitely, people will buy more newspapers if it's in our languages. Imagine
Yes,
having comics in your languages, things like that. So yeah, that's the plans I have for now.
those are good plans, very interesting ones. So now looking at, let's take 5 to 10 years from now, what emerging technologies do you think are you most excited about, or do you think could really improve resources and tools for African language communities?
Okay, AI is becoming AI is permeating everywhere currently. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
definitely. And I'm glad that we have a lot of researchers and scientists or developers who are working in natural language processing, trying to like bring up different kinds of software that would enable us develop our languages and use our languages more. So I feel like 10 years from now, we're definitely going to have a better machine translation software, different kinds of machine translation software for our languages because the ones we currently have now is definitely not it at all. Let's not even go to Google Translate or, or when you post something on social media in your language and then you now use the translation tool to translate to see what it's like in English for people from other countries, what they are going to read if they translate it. So I feel like 10 years from now, that will change. And currently I've been working on, different kind of projects of translating websites, like Amazon websites, translating WhatsApp, translating, different kind of game apps and different kind of utility apps.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of companies they are really, really pushing on having these, is it UI, UX in their languages, in indigenous languages, so that
Mm-hmm.
other countries or people of other languages can easily access them. So I feel like that's, or some of the technology that are going to like come up to support our languages, including text to speech or speech to text software, because I know a couple of researchers that are currently working on that, to develop a text to speech or speech to text models that would enable us to be able to, probably with your keyboard, some of our keyboards have like voice support such that when you don't have strength to type, you can just click on the mic and then you speak and then you write down what you speak. So there's a possibility that 10 years from now, we can have that available for our languages. I'm really, really looking forward to that.
I'm also looking forward to that. So, I mean, so we are bringing our conversation to an end. For those inspired by your work and wanting to follow a similar path, what advice would you give to aspiring young African language activists on building professional skills and using tech for?
Okay, for younger people who want to go into language services and language advocacy, I would tell them, even though you might want to do this because of the money that comes with it, try and do it majorly first for the passion. Secondly, for the drive of, or the joy that comes with seeing your language being developed.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have that passion first. You should really love your language, really love to speak your language, really love to learn more about your language, really love to research about your language, and also have that drive for satisfaction. When you imagine you see a billboard in your language and everything is perfect, the diacritics, the punctuations, it just makes sense. Or you see a young people out there probably having a debate and they are properly speaking, the language. Like have that passion of seeing your language developed. That will help you because language advocacy is not easy. Sometimes you are speaking, it's as if nobody's listening. Yeah, passion, the drive, and then also aim to be better. Don't feel like, okay, because I know how to speak, I know how to read my language, I'm so good in my language. That means that there's no room for improvement. Okay, try to learn more, try to do more research, try to do more documentation, try to reach out to other people, to also see from their own points of view. Try to be open to correction. Okay, always ask questions. Don't feel like, okay, you are good on your own because we don't know it all. Okay? So always strive to, strive to be better.
Yes, let's always strive to be better. We definitely don't know it all. So before we go, Mr. Onyekachi, what is your favorite Igbo word? Before we go, our listeners want to learn one Igbo word before we end our conversation today.
Okay,
What's
I
your
would
favorite?
say Odemma.
Odemma. What is the
Odemma.
Odemma?
Odemma means like it has different meanings based on context. It means
Mm-hmm.
it is well. No, it means it's well. It means it's okay. It's fine. It can also
Mm-hmm.
mean just okay. Maybe someone asks you, "Are you sure? Are you sure this? Are you okay with this? Or is this okay with you?" I don't think Odemma is
Okay.
as a response.
Okay.
Or are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. So it can also mean, maybe it can also be used sarcastically. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
someone asks you if you can do this, and you're like, or them. That means, yeah, like, like there's no way I can do this. So it can be used in different contexts.
Okay, that's very interesting. So
Mm.
I'm sure our listeners who are following our conversation, I'm sure they are going to respond to this conversation with Odemma. They really enjoyed it, I guess. So, Ms. Onyeka, this has been a insightful discussion. Thank you for joining us and sharing your valuable perspective. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Alert podcast. Well, that's all we have for today. So until next time, let's keep celebrating and preserving Africa's rich linguistic heritage. This has been the Alas podcast, and I've been your host, Rebecca Agbe. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for having me. It was exciting. Like, thank you so much.